we'll get started. And we'll be ready to go at that point. I hope to answer most of the questions that you have. At the end, if there's questions that you still have, there should be some email addresses. Email those questions to me or to whoever you can get to. We'll try to find those answers and get those answers back to you. We hope to be making some regular presentations about our progress, about how it's going. Just so you know, I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce David Gelamo, our architect with Metaforum. He's also here with us today too. So. Gotta love technology. No, go to the first one. That's at the end. No. Side one, St. Joseph. This is who we are. This is where we're going. Second side, please. Little history. Okay, so this is what we got. Oop. We moved to this, we started here in 1975. That's what I wanted the guys to know, and the building was here. We didn't build this building to come in here. I started attending regularly here. Again, I'm Brooke Kniper. When I moved to Round Rock, Texas to start my job back in August of 2003. So for the last 22 years or so, I've been attending Mass here. In about 2008, Father Zig rang through the direction of our prior at that time, had instructed us in 2008. They've all told me to come through there and start looking for a new place for us to go because we were growing at that time also already. But he gave me the following restrictions, which I want you to be aware of. Must have an existing structure, which means we have to find a church. Must be inside the loop, that's the 410 loop. And it must have at least what we already have, which is a hall, a chapel, that seats at least what we have. They wanted twice what we have right now. Classrooms and a rectory, all in the same place. And he gave me a $1 million budget to go and do that with. So any of you guys from San Antonio that may know this, that's kind of unrealistic. The buildings that I did find were in very bad shape. And during those times, in those years from 2008, we found several. And I had even the district superior, who was Father Wegner at that time, come and visit. And they said none of those buildings were worth what we were doing. So the prior changed to Father Purdy in about 2020, to Father Purdy. Father Purdy said, no, what you're looking for, those restrictions are bad. He came in with new directives. He wanted us to allow to build new. And in less than a year, we had found the Schertz property, which is what we're working on right now. Next slide, please. Since that time, we've done quite a bit of stuff in the last couple of years. It took over a year for Father Purdy pleading our case with the Society of St. Pius X. Those higher-ups for approvals. Yes, we have the need. Okay, then to come back, you can look. All right, you have to build these certain types of structures. Well, what type of structures? They didn't want us to do metal buildings. They wanted us to do solid constructions or something. We couldn't do tilt walls. We couldn't do this, couldn't do that. And Father Purdy, for about a year, was arguing with them. Let us build, let us build, let us build. We can get this and we can make it look good. Until those finally approvals came through from Menzingen. Now, in Switzerland, they only have a meeting once a month. So if we meet the cutoff, if we don't meet the cutoff to put ourselves on the agenda, then we have to wait a whole nother month to go, which is why it takes so long to get answers all the way from Switzerland. They don't meet every week. They don't meet on a regular, it's once a month. And if we miss that cutoff, like I said, we have to wait a whole nother month while we're sitting there waiting. Well, they'll have a meet. They take our project, they look at it, they say, hey, we have a question about this, and they send it back to us. No approvals, answer this question. Well, we answer the question, now we have to wait a month for them to get back to us on it, okay? So it takes time for these things to get going. With the monthly meetings, many decisions it took months to get. Our architect was working for free at that time. Thank God we had David. David's here, and he's doing all the answer these questions for Switzerland over there, trying to get those things done and working for free. I'm here in San Antonio with Mr. Schrader, trying to beat down doors so I can get him paid so I can put him on a contract and let's get going. We had to answer questions about what we're going to build, what we're going to do before they'd even put the guys on contract. So that took some time. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, you're good. Finally, about 6 months ago, Father was able to sign a contract with Metaform. That's David's company. That's who he's working with. And in that time, we've completed lots of different things: geological surveys, topographical, as well into the schematic design, and we'll show those pictures next. So where are we right now? Right now, most of you guys know this. We have probably 755 people. We just did an update on our parish directory, and these are active members. Now, we don't see almost 800 people or over 700 people at Mass because my grandmother is one of those people who still claims this is her home church, but she hasn't been here since before COVID times because she's really old. And Father goes and sees her when he goes to Austin. So it's people like that. So understand that we have a lot of people, but not all attend Mass here. Sunday Masses have a combined total of 400 people, which is very close to our max. Standing room only for most Masses. Currently have 2 Sunday Masses, Saturday Mass, or at least every Saturday, or most Saturdays. First Friday Mass, First Saturday Masses, and first class feast day Masses are usually at Christmas, Easter's, those types of things. Average collection is about $3,500 per week with about $14,000 per month, and we all know what the current condition of our facility is right now. Okay, if you have questions on that, please email these. I'll be happy to show you all the problems that we have. So, next slide, please. We did purchase the 5-acre property with a 3-bedroom house and church in 2021 for about $650,000. Father Purdy has already acquired 48 pews, 16 foot in length, reclaimed from another church, but we'll need to purchase more of those and match them to be able to fill the church that we're designing right now. It's also my understanding that Father Purdy has been in discussions with a person from Ecuador about building some 20 foot by 25 foot reredos. Those are the big altar backdrops. Thank you. Altar backdrops goes behind the main altars. He's also trying to build one or get one built for the side altars in the new church also. So I think he's down in Ecuador right now. I just heard he may be discussing with those guys, meeting with them about that too. I don't have any designs on that yet. I haven't talked about that, but I know what they are. So, next slide. So this is the first version of what we had, okay? There are a few changes on this picture, so don't say, oh, that's what our church is going to look like. It's going to look very similar to this, but it's not exact. There are a couple design changes that we've made. The bell tower is going to slide out a little bit. The walkway here underneath is going to be on the backside, which will be our courtyard. But we'll still have these designs and stuff, and we haven't decided about what the outside of it's going to look like. And the transepts aren't going to be that big either. Father Purdy wanted smaller transepts. So, but this is the basic design of what it's going to look like. Next slide, please. Now, what all this says. The most recent site plan, which just came out a couple of weeks ago. 140 parking places on our site. Detention ponds for water retention, a deceleration lane so that we can get off the road and turn into our church. 2-lane entrance exit on the north side with an emergency vehicle lane to the south side of our property. Ample room for the parish hall. Still have a large grassy area, which Father Purdy really, really wants. Geological survey will allow us to build with slab on grade, if I was correct on that. So that's good for us. Don't have to build pier and beam or do special work to try to build up the foundation for that. So, and the house on the property will be used as our rectory. Next slide. And this is what it's going to kind of look like on the site. Parking to the front, detention ponds, our main entrance. This is the deceleration coming off of 1518. I'm sorry if you can't see. I'm a big guy, I block a lot of pictures. This is how our church will sit on the property. The rectory is on this side. This is where the hall will be. This is the big grassy area that Father wants. Parking on all sides. We'll get closer to the church. We'll look at the church here in a minute as it's looking, but this is our site plan, and this is what it's going to look like as it sits. Kind of a bird's eye view. The hall is like phase 2 of our project. We're hoping to have the foundation poured at the same time that we pour the foundation, so we can just go up from that. But that's a little bit into the phases, but the hall will come up as phase 2. That's what I understand. Next slide, please. Thank you. The floor plan, here's our floor plan. We'll talk about it first, then show pictures. Men's restroom will have 3 toilets, 2 urinals, and 3 sinks. The women's restroom, 5 toilets and 3 sinks. We'll seat 660 in the nave of the church, with 16 of those seats being in a cry room on the same floor, on the same level as the rest of the church. The second floor cry room will have addition seating. 5 separate exits for the nave of the church, which is an issue in the past about safety. If something happened in here and we had to get out, we're kind of packed in these places. So 5 separate exits over there on those things. Wider aisles and longer pews. The pews will be 16 feet in length as opposed to our 8-foot ones that we have in here. So larger families will be able to sit together. And we'll have enough of them that they'll be able to sit together, we hope, until we get too big for that one. And a covered walkway that'll be in the courtyard. Next slide, please. Here's what this church is going to look like. 322 seats, all in a row, on each side, on the north side and on the south side. We'll have a narthex, which you can come in and get dressed and then come into the church. So you're ready to go. Nice large sanctuary over there with an actual communion rail and 3 steps for those of us that serve Mass. We'll actually have an elevated altar. The north transept will have an altar in there, I'm thinking, which where their father, we've heard he was last talking about. We might have one somewhere in the south transept also. The only thing that we're still in discussions on design is where the confessional is going to be. So the confessional is probably going to be a standalone, which will be a separate structure that we may put in one of the transepts also. So there will be a confessional, but it doesn't show this in here. A vesting room, which could possibly be turned into a confessional. But a lot of times the priests want to vest here when we make the large processions and then come up the main altar, so we don't have to come in from the sides or do those types of things. So, ushers' closets, again, the bathrooms are off on the side, and what happens, we put those here is because it'll join to the hall, so both the hall and the chapel will share the same restroom areas. So we don't have to build extras for both. So this is the covered walkway that'll come from the inside. This is where the parish hall will be built also. The stairs in the bell tower will lead us into the choir loft. 2 16-foot pews over there with 14 seats per. Over there in our cry room is toward the back of the hall. And that's basically our design. Working sacristy, the priest sacristy have his own restroom and stuff in there also up on the top side. Again, these are preliminary. We haven't drawn the schematics to actually put the plumbing and the wires and all that kind of stuff in. I don't know necessarily where we're going to put our mechanical rooms for all of our PAs and that kind of stuff. That comes in the next phases that Dave will be talking about here in a few minutes. Next slide, please. This is our front view of what the church should look like, barring no color. I mean, you can see that. Nice rose window. This is not the covered walkway, but we'll have arches in design on there, so it'll look pretty decent. It will look nice. This is where the hall will go. It will match our same. Next slide, please. Bell tower over there on that side. This is pretty close to what our bird's eye view is going to look like, with a couple of exceptions. These aren't as wide. They'll be narrower. The bell tower here is going to be set out to the edge. We'll match up to the edge, so we won't have these cutouts on either side here. But the sacristy will still have the cutouts because Father wants windows up there that'll put natural light down into our altar and our sanctuary area. So this area of the church will be the same. This will be facing not due east, but a little bit northeast because it fits better that way into our lot. Next slide, please. These are the elevations. Top of our crucifix. Now again, this is kind of on the wrong side, but this is given heights. 55 feet to the top of our cross on top of our bell tower. The front facade is going to be at 38 feet 10 inches. The church itself, in the nave of the church, the narthex will be 25 feet to the ceiling. The second floor will start at about 14 feet. So we'll have a nice tall building. Next slide, please. And on the other side, this is where the sanctuary area is. The altar finished floor is going to be 1.6 foot above because of the steps, those types of things. The sacristy, 12 foot to the ceiling. The ceiling above the sanctuary will be at 22 feet. 22 feet. Next slide, please. So when are we going to be able to move into this brand new building that we're looking? Well, David put us a tentative schedule together. This is what we're looking at. This is what we're doing. This is where we're going to be. The schematic phase, design phase is already in progress. Should be ending here in next week. Should be completed at that time. The design development phase not yet started, but starts the next day. So we're moving forward. Should take us a couple of months to get the design phase finalized. Then we'll go into the construction documents phase where they actually print out the documents. Everything is put so that we can send those documents out to the different types of contractors so that we can go to the bidding phase. The bidding phase is where we're going to get a finalize on what it's going to cost us to build this. And to the city of Church for approvals and the permits. And TxDOT and all of those things because of the deceleration lane, that sort of thing. All that's going to happen. Those documents have to go to those people for their approvals. And then finally the construction phase, which we're looking at starting, if everything stays to schedule, 15th of October of this year, with a completion date of 15th of October of next year, 2026. Barring any unforeseen things, this is our tentative schedule. We're currently at the end of the schematic phase, design phase, what I talked about. Phase 1, the environmental assessments, these have already been done. The geotechnical study and report, the topographical tree survey, project program, number and sizes of rooms, and the conceptual floor plan, elevations, and site plan have all been done. You saw those pictures of those. Next slide, please. So, this is what we're trying to build. So what's this going to cost? All the way down on the bottom, this number right here, $5,097,000. That being said, this is a very conservative and high estimate because we don't have A, bids, B, we don't have the plumbing in, we don't have the drawings for the electrical, we don't have the actual finalized design phases of these documents. So this is a high estimate. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Don't let this scare you off. This is a high estimate, $5.1 million. This number should still be around the $3 million we hoped. Three and a half is what we're looking at for actual when we go into the bids and start the actual construction. Okay? Kind of a breakdown. The only thing that's not put up in there is the church hall at $250 a square foot. It's going to be roughly 10,000 square feet. So that's how big the hall is. The hall design still may have 2 floors with classrooms on the top, the big meeting room and that sort of thing on the bottom with the kitchen area, that type of thing. That's still well early on the design phase. We haven't even really talked about that in our meetings. So next slide, please. So our finances is the big question for a lot of people. As of the 24th of this month, a couple of days ago when I got this, in the bank right now we have 1.5 and change in the bank right now. The flock note has another $213,000 in it with pledges and actual donations. So our total cash right now is 1.7. Since we've started our fundraising program in March of 2023, we've raised $461,000 in change. 247 of that is in the form of the collection baskets over that time also. When we do our building fund collection the first of each month, that money's also going in there. 247 of that $1,000 we've come with that. So we are still getting money in and we're continuing to raise our money. We really don't have any idea what this property is worth. We've not had it appraised. We haven't had anybody come and look at it and say, yeah, I want to buy it and I'll give you $4.8 million for your property. Nobody's done that yet. If you want to, please do. But the number of about 500,000 has been bounced around quite a bit of what our property, which is all the property from our fence here to the lot on the other side of the rectory. I don't know if many of you guys know that, but we own the house where Father stays, and we own the lot next to that also. So we have a nice big property there for about $500,000 is an estimate that we have. If we add that $500,000 back up into this, to our total cash, then we're looking at 2.5. Well, 2.5 is roughly half of our 5.1 that we're looking at. We're about halfway there if everything falls into place. And it's almost 9 o'clock, so I have to give up. So I'm trying to go as fast as I can. Next slide. I think that's it for me. So what do we need to do now? We're going to talk about the Highland Park project, which is the church down on top. Brett will talk about those. The Hollands will come in, talk about some options, and then we'll be able, if we have any time left, we'll talk about questions from there. Okay? Good. Yep.
while he's pulling that up, hey y'all, my name is Brett Lipscomb. I go to Tinkhop, Mass. I've been here since about 2021. I run the website here, and I help Mr. Eric Adam with the streaming. Quick story. Since I've been here a few years, and I know our squeezing issues that we have. What's up? Closer. Can y'all hear me in the back? Yes. Perfect. All right. Sitting in the confessional line one day, chapel's already packed, overflow room's getting full. I see this brand new family walk in. Dad, mom, maybe 3 or 4 children. Look around, nowhere to sit. Gentleman walks up to the family and says, hey, there's seating in the cry room. You can sit in there. I get out of the confessional and look in the cry room to tell them, hey, we actually have seating in the overflow. And they're gone. And I haven't seen them back since. Being frustrated with this issue, me and my wife went shopping, and I was looking online for some properties, and I happened to find, when it gets pulled up, a property called Highland Park Lutheran Church. I'll give it a little pause. Just, yeah, click on this one right here. Click. Boom. Almost there. Alrighty, cool. No worries. So this is the exterior of the church, all limestone. Next slide. So a couple facts about this building. I already said what it's called, Highland Park Lutheran Church, located at 705 Hammond Avenue. It is currently on the market for $1.9 million. We've been in talks with their parish coordinators, and we have received a verbal offer to get it lowered to $1.2 million. Building was built and dedicated in their Lutheran fashion on June 3rd, 1951, so it's a little old. Next slide, please. So its location, I already mentioned the address. It's close to downtown San Antonio. Doesn't look like it when you're actually there, but straight shot off of I-10 when you're coming from Houston, easy drive for father. And it's currently about 11 miles or 11 miles or 60 minutes away from our current location as of right now. Next slide, please. So conveyance is what we're going to receive if we get this place. If. They already have a high altar rails, an ombo, a baptismal font, and a big marble statue of Jesus. That is marble imported from Italy, quarried there. The reredos are made from a German chestnut, big heavy things, and the stained glass windows are imported from France. Also, I didn't mention that the pews themselves are made of oak as well. Next slide. Here are a few more pictures of the church, and that's what the rest of this slideshow is going to be, is just pictures of the inside. Oh yeah, by the way, the stained glass windows are a depiction of the life of Christ. Here's at the ground floor. That's my wife here and their parish coordinator. Choir loft. Also a nave. Narthex. Next slide. This is the high altar. Next slide. Marble ombo and baptismal font. I beg your pardon? Roughly about 450 people. Oh yeah. So as Miss Katie Holland pointed out, there is a little side chapel off to the, if you're looking down the church to the right. They have a little side altar there, as well as extra pews. Could be a spot for confessional. A couple hundred? Actually, I don't remember. 75, way off. All right. Next slide. Here's some pictures of the altar rail. I thought it was beautiful. This mosaics of the four evangelists. What was that? Mm-hmm. And it's Latin. So, a few missing items. They don't have a pipe organ. They used to, and they sold it to stay afloat. They have an electric organ set up in there right now. They do not have a confessional, and they also do not have Stations of the Cross. Almost Catholic. Here is the cry room. It's a window looking into the chapel. Stained glass in there as well. Big old couch. Space for a few families. And as also pointed out to me, you can see the altar very clearly through the window. This is a one-way glass, so people can't look in at you, but families can look out. Right. Next slide. So, as I mentioned, the narthex has a narthex. Next slide. And here's the courtyard. By the way, I haven't mentioned this yet, but this whole area right here, this hallway, and this building right here is a school. It used to be a school. Next slide. All right, so real quick, just a couple QR codes. If you're not part of the flock notes to receive announcements and updates about the church, we will be sending out a poll later on after we've given you this update. If you want to receive that poll and have a voice, go back. We can hit it later. Point is, if you're not on the flock note, get on the flock note. Yeah. The next slides.
Because I think it's worth, after we continue to talk a little bit more, we'll put this slide back up at the end for you to get connected on the flock note, because we are going to talk about following up on this presentation and kind of next steps. And then obviously the link for the donations, which is the crux of all of this. So we'll put that back up at the very end.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. So my name's Joe Holland. This is my wife, Katie Holland. We've been coming here for about 2 years. Obviously, when we first moved here, we were very excited to hear about the new church project. And in fact, the first weekend we were here was when Father Purdy was here as well and kind of announced it. So since, yeah, did I say 2 years? Yeah, 2 years. So since that time, we've been, eagerly awaiting updates and information about the next stage of the project. So very thankful to the folks who've been doing a lot of this work behind the scene. But yeah, so Katie and I, basically this last presentation to kind of cap this off, the third section is, as you can imagine from the first two presentations, like everything in life, right, we can't have our cake and eat it too, right? So we've got church project in shirts that's looking about $5 million, pretty far in advance, but then this other church came up as an option too. So we just like to present on essentially what we've identified as 4 main options and the pros and cons of each one of those, so that you can go home, think on it, chew on it, and then ultimately the goal is to have a second meeting where we can gather more feedback
and input from the congregation. So obviously, the church, just like our parish, is not a democracy. So when I say feedback, it's really just that. We want to take the feedback from the parishioners, give that to the society, fully knowing that whatever feedback we give, they can, choose to take or leave. But ultimately, since we're the parishioners, we do want them to know what we're feeling as well. So, all right, so let's kick off the options. Like I said, there's 4 that we've identified. There's probably more in the, if we were to talk details, but these are the 4 main ones. So first option, pursue only the new church and shirts. This would mean, essentially we'd be staying in Orland Park for some time, and we have our current size and space limitations. Pros are that we've already invested in it. It's a new build, so there's a lot of things we can control. It is the SSPX currently approved option, and they've given us, the freedom to move forward. It's supported by our prior, Father Purdy. In fact, he's doing most of the design and kind of control over the project. It does have that 3-bedroom house on the property, so we have an existing rectory there. It's also going to have a lot of space for parking. One of the things that Brett didn't mention about the Highland Park project, or maybe you did, Brett, is that the pretty limited parking. We can talk about that next slide. Sorry, we can talk about that in the next slide. Please stay on this one. It's also a rural location, which, depending on if you like that or not, that's pro or con. And then, also good location. That can also be variable because that's pretty subjective. Might be a good location for some. Cons, wait time, right? Project, we're looking even at kind of the speed of it. Also, the cost and time are kind of tied together, right? Because what we've heard is that the society wants us to make sure that we have funds for each stage of the project. Right now we have $1.7 million. This project is looking to be about $4 to $5 million. So how can we bridge that gap as the project progresses, right? So keep that in mind. Also, we're talking about funds for only the church, no hall, classrooms for catechesis, etc. And then also, as I said, location can be a con for some. Next slide, please. Option 2 would be to pursue Highland Park as kind of a sole focus. Faster move, we could probably be in it 6 months if the deal were to close. Cost is also significantly cheaper. It does have an existing hall, classrooms, bookstore, a courtyard, all of those things. Also has some pretty timeless accoutrements, right? It's imported French stained glass, pews from Forest in Germany, things like that. And then once again, location could be a pro there. Cons, age, just like this building, asbestos, things like that. It's 74 years old, so it's not a spring chicken. Yeah, they've disclosed that there are some issues with the building, and we can talk about that later. Has minimal parking. The society seems to be a little bit less enthusiastic about this option. Obviously, we have to pay for inspections and all of those things. Cons, more space than needed for right now. So the parish hall and the classrooms and stuff are a lot more than we currently have for parishioners. No rectory, and then once again the location. Third slide, please. Option 3 is somewhat of a hybrid option where we would sell Orland Park and try to lease Highland Park until the Shirts project is done. So we would essentially leapfrog from here to Highland Park with keeping Shirts as the eventual goal. The pros with this is that we eliminate the costs of the current Orland Park keeping up with taxes and keeping the water and lights on, etc. We resolve our space problem pretty much immediately. More space equals more people, more donations, faster to the end goal. We don't have the responsibility to renovate or keep up Highland Park, and then hopefully if we were to do this, it would inspire some momentum for folks to eventually since we know that's only a temporary solution, maybe that would increase giving. We could be in our end goal faster. We also have a lawyer in Dickinson who's a parishioner there who's willing to kind of help us with some of the legal aspects of the lease and et cetera. Cons, we're not even sure if the folks at the Lutheran Church would be willing to do a lease option. Okay.
Just there was a conversation about whether leasing was an option, and the coordinator we're speaking with can't speak specifically on behalf of the congregation, like formally, correct? But he said they were much more willing to sell. Don't know, excuse me, if they'd be willing to accept a lease, but was willing to accept a formal proposal for a lease from us, which the lawyer was willing to drop. So we really don't know the likelihood of their acceptance of that, but at least that they'd be willing to receive a proposal for a lease.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, we're trying to lay things out to y'all so that we can kind of craft our next move as a chapel. So we also lose the rectory here if we were to sell this property, and then if they do sell in the meantime, we'd be homeless, right? So we would be, if we're just leasing, we would need to find some other place for mass. Next slide, please. Option 4, once again, a hybrid option. We keep Orland Park, we lease Highland Park, and we also pursue Shirts. The pro of this are all of the previous pros and cons. This is kind of like an attempt to have your cake and eat it too. The pro is that we have kind of a fallback option in case Highland Park was to be sold. We could keep the rectory, etc. The cons are that this could split the congregation because there might be things going on there and things going on here, and then you're having one more cost to maintain. You're splitting your funds in 3 different directions as opposed to focusing them in a certain area. So, to be honest, this is my least favorite option personally. I think when you have too many things you're focusing on, you tend to give less attention to each one, but that's my opinion. So yeah, now we're going to open it up to questions from y'all. Yes, sir. Yeah. You're not going to get that in the new church. Yeah. And sorry, and what was your name? David. Thank you. So David had a great question. It was essentially, what are the existing problems with Highland Park, right? He's correct that a lot of those things that are associated with Highland Park, the pews, the marble, the stained glass windows, those things are, they're, they have. Right, you can't even probably build those nowadays. So great question. I can't speak to all the problems, but I know there are problems with, I think, the boiler for heat. It does have asbestos. Probably some of that needs to be remediated. We have asbestos in our current building as far as I know. But, I mean, that requires special remediation teams and things like that. But we haven't done any inspections. I mean, it's clear if you walk through the building, there's probably been some water damage. I don't know the age of the roof, but, yeah, David, I can't tell you all the problems, but things like that. That's correct. We haven't had inspections yet. But great question. I mean, we need to know exactly those things before we would. Really? Are you an inspector? Okay, very cool. Yes, ma'am. And what's your name? Yes, Beth. As big as I think we're proposing for the new church. With the choir loft and the side chapel and the current, I mean, it's big, probably over 500. It would be the same size? More or less, approximately. Okay. Is that including the choir loft at okay. Okay. Gotcha. So it looks like Shirts would be a little bit bigger than. Yes. Azalea asked about bathrooms. I know we saw a few when we toured Highland Park. I don't know the exact number, but I think there's a significant number of bathrooms. So let's leave it at that.
What I understand about them is that a lot of that building, since that congregation has not been able to support the whole thing, a lot of it has been mothballed. I have not been everything, a lot of like all of the classroom stuff's kind of been shut down. So
Yeah.
I don't know what bathrooms are available or actually working or have water to them. But again, all of those were kind of built in the 50s, that type of thing. So
Yeah, I mean it's very clear. It's very clear when you go through the building that it's been a congregation in decline. They have the space, but a lot of it needs TLC, touch up, cleaning, all of that type of thing. Great question, Azalea. Anybody else? Yes, Bob. Oh, yes. Okay, great question. Parking issues with Highland Park, right? So there's as far as I remember, there's a small parking lot across the street from the church. Then there's street. When I say
with a comparable amount to what we had in our parking lot and like the dirt lot. That's
Yeah.
about as big as it is. It's pretty small.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
We would
There,
use street parking.
there is a school also coincidentally across the street. However, I've been told that the school is closed and they have a gate across their parking lot, so we couldn't park there unless we work something out with the school district. I don't.
Their congregation used to use that parking lot until the school shut down, like in the last year or two, and they closed and locked the parking lot.
So, but then you've also got the street parking, just like we do here, and then there is another lot that,
They had previously purchased and then sold.
but we might be able to buy back. That could be like another lot for parking. But good question. I don't know all the details, but hopefully that gives you kind of a flavor for what exists. Small parking lot, street parking, possibility of another lot. There's also, in terms of rectory, there's not a rectory, but we could potentially renovate one of. I mean, the school is huge, 3 stories. We could potentially renovate, something to be like a rectory / apartment, right, in the school, and or there's also a house across the street that maybe also used to be associated with the parish, but that would be.
The coordinator hinted it's a rental home and the owner has a hard time keeping it rented out. He said that they might be interested in selling the house, eventually possibly purchase and turn into a rectory.
Yeah.
Also, if we keep this property, we have a rectory here, and it's, like I say, it's only 20 minutes from there, plus we have the rectory, and the Shirts property is 20 minutes from there. So, we have, that's, I think, a small.
Yeah, but the permitting now is gonna be about shirts, because, you're gonna have electrical, plumbing, you're gonna have to bring power to the area.
We have
That's
power,
gonna be
there's
expensive.
power here because we have all the utilities, and we already
Yeah.
have the house on the property right
Yeah,
now.
but not the power that you need to run church.
Yeah, that's all included. I mean, we're working with the city of Shirts, working with TxDOT, to get all that done. I mean, that's no different than any other new construction project. Obviously, we're requiring power, water, sewer, to the facility.
And that's included in the 5 million.
Wait, 10 minutes. Could we do a few more? Or we good?
This is about the cost. The $5 million, when we sent that, that's the first estimate that we did. And we had no idea really what we were.
So-
David put in together a high cost, being very conservative. When we sent that to Minzy in, they cut us off, so we did bill.
So-
We never got enough money.
So we are running up on.
We went back, Father Purdy, like Brooke was saying, Father Purdy, they completed to allow us to build a metal building. It's much cheaper than what we were able to build. So, $5 million is not gonna cost us.
So I think we got to shut it off because we're coming up on mass. But I guess the next step, just for you all here today, right? Chew on this, think about it, talk about it with your families. Right, we got different options, right? But we can't realistically do it all. So at some point, we're kind of coming to a crossroads in a lot of different ways. So think about it, pray about it, and then our goal is to have a follow-up meeting, maybe a couple weeks time, where we get more feedback from y'all and actually get a rough, once again, not binding, but some type of consensus or at least some responses to give to the society so that they know what we're thinking, right? Because I don't know if we've actually kind of built a momentum in community around these type of decisions. So,
Hey, so real quick, why I mentioned the flock note, any questions that you have like burning right now or that you're going to be chewing up later, we will be sending a poll. One moment. We're going to send a poll with all the options that they just went over.
if you think of other options, tell us those, right? Maybe there's some hybrid. We chewed on this a lot, but maybe we're not infallible, right? We might have missed something.
And in the bottom of that poll, there's going to be a block for whatever questions you have. Just throw it in there and then submit the poll, and we're going to get that question, and we'll get that answer for you.
And we'll also make sure you have access to all the photos and updates of everything so you can really,
Can you put that on the website?
obviously, don't have to remember this all.
I think we're going to try to put all 3 of the presentations on the website so that you can access those. Sorry. I think it's on the church website too. So great questions. Also, if you have other questions, find me or somebody else up here after mass.